are listening to RockDocs.com, the podcast that celebrates the intersection of great films about amazing musicians. And now your hosts, El Grande Rojo and the mayor of San Francisco, Joe Smart and Sean Harris.
You know, I think it was Victor Hugo that said, more powerful than a marching army is an idea whose time has come. This army, what you're hearing, is a band called Death. The documentary is called A Band Called Death, and I don't normally play music on here because of rights and this and that, but I told Sean, I don't care. These guys need to be heard.
The story is incredible enough, but the fact that the music is great is really just icing, and the music is fantastic.
We're gonna be talking today about a story about three brothers you know so well. I'm just kidding. Three brothers from Detroit, growing up in the shadow of Motown. The year 1972. This is as old as I am. The band forms with three brothers, and they are forged in fire, blood brothers, back each other's play till the end. And because of that, for one reason or another, these guys have never gotten their due. They predate the Ramones and what people think of as the beginning of punk. I guess you could refer to this as proto-punk or early punk, but for whatever reason...
Yeah, I mean, there's punk. You can certainly tell in the verses that's strong punk. When that chorus hits in, that's like metal. That's Black Sabbath-ish, and this is far before that even.
They were so punk that people were not ready for three black guys. First of all, if it wasn't that, it was the name. We're not putting out a band called Death. You can't just say Death. That's too much for everybody. And they were even coming to it from a really positive spiritual place. They came from, and it was, some people called them, too religious or whatever, but it was really more of a spiritual vibe. But even that was against them. It was too spiritual for the rock guys, too punk for everybody else, and the name nobody got. But the brothers just said, this is what we're doing. Give us our masters. We'd rather hold on to them until the world is ready.
And that's exactly what they did. The founder, the brother David, who really was the orchestrator of the entire band, kept telling the brothers, look, just be patient. The world's going to know who we are when it's time. Really, really eerie, but it's just an amazing story. And, Joe, one thing that I think about, this is a story I'd have never known if it wasn't for Mark making this documentary. But how many other stories out there are like this or similar that we just don't know about?
That's the reason we do this show. I mean, I got to hand it to Sean on this one. I did not know about this, and he was like, we're having on this guy, we're doing this thing, you got to watch this doc, and I thought I'd seen it all, and I was absolutely blown away and can't wait to do this podcast. And we're going to talk with one of the filmmakers, Mark Covino, and get into it here. But oh my God, if you haven't seen this, I don't care if you don't like punk, you'll appreciate the brotherhood. You'll appreciate the story. Really emotionally powerful for me.
Yeah, I mean, I would even venture to say that if you don't feel something after watching this, you are garbage.
You're trash.
It's a scheme, there's a theme. Why is my head spinning round in a dream? It's that time to please. Why all these lights popping up in my face? Or am I freaking out, freaking out, freaking out, freaking out?
Now, if you're wondering why we're freaking out, it's because Mark Covino, the filmmaker, along with Jeff Howard of a band called Death, is on the show right now. Mark, welcome.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Man, I don't have enough good stuff to say about this documentary. Can you start by just giving people maybe the elevator version of this and kind of talk to us about how you got involved and how it came to be?
Yeah, sure. So a band called Death it's a documentary about these three African-American brothers from Detroit, Michigan, who in the early 1970s began playing and recording essentially what is proto-punk, like 6 years before the Sex Pistols and the Ramones. And they got very close to signing a deal with Clive Davis at Arista Records, but he wanted them to change the name. Death was a very negative name back in the early to mid-70s, and he wanted something that he thought could sell more records. And one of the leaders of the band, David Hackney, told them to go to hell, and so they didn't get signed. And they kind of fell into obscurity from there. They released a 45, which didn't really make, much noise during the time. A lot of people were kind of throwing it away. It wasn't what they wanted. And basically 35 years later, somebody found that record, and the news blew about this band. And that's when we came on to do a documentary on them. I think that was short enough.
Yeah, Mark, you know what's cool? Leave it to the record store kids to find this and breathe new life into it. Joe and I go to a record store, and we're just like, oh man, check this out. I've never heard of this, but look at the cover. Like, I have to check this out.
And I think Dennis Hackney was the one that was like, $800. I would have gave you one of those 45s if I had it laying around.
I love Dennis. And none of the guys really understood. They didn't get it. They said it was kind of silly that people were spending that kind of money on this 45 that nobody wanted in the 70s, But that just goes to show you how humble they all are about it.
People are going to think this is hyperbole, but I think there's a few people that invade our planet every now and then that are not of the right space and time. I'm talking Nikola Tesla, people like that, and I dare say David Hackney was
very much.
Yeah, I mean, you get that, right? I mean, he was the world was not ready for what he was throwing down, but he's also a little bit of a prophet when he hands Dennis the stuff and says, you got to hang on to this because the world's going to come looking for it.
Yeah, it's insane. It sends chills down my spine just thinking about all that. And that's exactly how it happened too. He gave him the record, gave him the 45 or the master tape and said, the world's going to come looking for this. And then not too long after that passed away.
Yeah.
And, it's crazy. It took about 9 years until the brothers realized that the world was coming looking for it.
Okay, so one of the funniest parts for us was that and I don't know the names of all the sons, but certainly they're part of Rough Francis. They when the word gets to them, they're not aware of the band. They only know about Lamb's Bread, and they're like, Dad, were you a part of this thing? And I'm like, how do you leave that out of your story to your kids? Like, they had literally undersold it to themselves that much as like a huge waste of their time.
It's crazy. I think they were just so embarrassed by the rejection they got from the 70s. It really hurt them. And their connection to David. And I think it just, to them, it was an embarrassing part of their past that they just didn't want to revisit. And, after death, they made a Christian rock band that didn't do well. And so they're like, man, we must really suck at this music thing. But then they did Lamb's Bread, and that got very big. And then they started having the kids. And so the kids only knew Lamb's Bread when they were growing up. But it is crazy to think that they never really told their sons about it. They did say they were in a rock band, but they never said what kind. And yet the sons, three of them, ended up forming punk rock bands themselves without any influence from their dad's music. It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing more punk than you're too spiritual. You're too your name is too controversial. Your skin is the wrong color.
Yeah.
I mean, they are the definition.
Oh yeah. Yeah. They definitely weren't playing music for the people in their neighborhood. I mean, they were blasting that music, and their neighbors were calling the cops on them and everything.
Yeah, right. Mark, it's important to point out to the people that haven't seen this documentary, of course, you've got to watch this documentary, but I mean, they grew up literally in the shadows of Motown.
Totally.
For them to go against the grain that hard and believe, so much in what they were doing, just a really cool story. And in the fact that David really stuck to his guns so hardcore when it would have been so easy to sell out. And the refusal to do that. And of all people, Clive Davis, who was a mogul.
There's tons of stories about guys who are in love with their own artistic vision, though, that they will tell the man to stick it. But for the brothers to back their brother's play all the way was absolutely remarkable, and probably one of the more emotional ties I had to this. But because everybody knows Clive knows what's going on, and he probably could have made them famous, but they wouldn't have been what they were.
Exactly. It would have been different. It wouldn't have been as pure, and family was first with those guys. And that's actually what drew me most to the story. I mean, the music did too, but definitely this strong family bond. It was just so interesting to me because I grew up with very little family in my life myself.
Yeah, Mark, this is a story that I would have never known about if you hadn't made this documentary. And there are several documentaries that we've seen in the past, the Big Star documentary, Searching for Sugar Man, stories like that I would never known about this. So I think what you've done is a huge service to the music community, because I know the documentary's been out for 5, 6, 7 years, but I think people are just beginning to appreciate it. Not that it hasn't been appreciated earlier, but it's just such a great message. And, it makes me wonder, like, did the producers reach out to you and say, hey, Mark, here's an idea for a documentary, or had you heard of them before?
So this is where the whole kind of Cinderella story starts. This was all an idea that originated with my co-director, Jeff Hallett. I had spent a good, 9 years in the state of Vermont at that point. I moved there when I ran away from home in Long Island, New York. And my dad lived up there, and so I had to finish high school. And I kind of just stuck in Vermont, went to college in Vermont, a film school up there. And my main goal was to make narratives. Ever since I was 9 years old, that's all I ever wanted to do, is to make a movie based on a screenplay, with actors and everything. But eventually my mom ended up dying, and I kind of fell into this depression where I couldn't write anymore. And I decided, let me try making documentaries. I'll just let life write itself for me, and I'll just go around documenting these cool stories I find. And my first documentary was kind of done as a joke. It was a mockumentary about how weird Vermont people are. I called it, I was a New Yorker who moved to a state that everything closes at 8, and there's a bunch of hippies, and I didn't get it. It was all new to me, and so we called it "What State Is Vermont In?" And we basically interviewed as many popular Vermonters and as many regular, normal Vermont people as we could, and then to keep in line with my goal of making narrative films, we turned the cameras around on us because we didn't know how to make a documentary at that time, and we film ourselves making that film, and we show how bumbling and dumb we were. So we'd have a script for our own characters in the film, but everyone else was interviewed like a real interview, and it was a terrible film. No one's ever going to see it. But that's where I cut my teeth, kind of starting in docs, and then a few years passed, and I was trying to make some narrative shorts, but again, I had some serious depression due to my mom passing away, and an old friend of mine hit me up about doing a real documentary based on the work that I did on the What State Is Vermont In? And his idea was to do a documentary on his roommates were fans of this hip hop group called Hush, which was an acronym for Help Us Save Hip Hop. And he said, I think you're going to like this because you're in the weird shit, and one of the people in this hip hop group has no arms or legs, and he rhymes like Eminem, and he bounces on the stage like a jumping bean.
I'm in.
I'm like, I'm in.
Sold.
Let's do it. And then the other cool thing was they hung out with people like Wu-Tang Clan and Rakim and Chuck D. So I was like, this is great. Like I could see a market for this. Not only and these kids, their passion came from one of their mothers was murdered when he was 12 years old, and the other one, like I said, was born without arms or legs. And so they both had these struggles in life, and they kind of used hip hop music to kind of turn negative experiences into positive lyrics. And so that's what I did for 3 years. That's where I really cut my teeth doing like serious doc stuff, was interviewing those kids, going to shows.
Did that come out? Is that available to see?
No, I never finished it.
Yeah, it happens.
My producer kind of, flaked on me. I ran out of money. I almost died a couple of times making it, in like a car accident, some other things. Yeah. And it just got to a point where it's like, this is too brutal on me. It's hurting me. I'm about to like sell my house because of this,
Yeah.
And at that point I was just like, I fucking hate documentaries. I'm done with this shit. Like 2 docs in a row. I'm broker than ever. Like no one's ever going to see this stuff.
The more you guys we interview, this is kind of a common theme.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, it's sad, right? It's reality though. I don't like to sugarcoat it. It was pretty brutal on me. And I cut a really good trailer for that. I called the film, it's got a terrible title. I called it Against All Odds. And the reason I called it that was because these kids were interviewed on a bunch of news broadcasts back when I started filming it. And the weird thing was every single news broadcast, it was like ABC, NBC, whoever interviewed them always called that segment Against All Odds. I thought it was so weird. And so I was like, that's what I'm going to call myself. It's like such a terrible title. But I mean, it's already been used,
Yeah, it's a window into the shallow mind of our local news media, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I basically I kind of abandoned that project, which I hated. I hate abandoning my own films. And I have a trailer. You guys can see it. It's on.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're gonna have to give that up at some point.
the trailer is really good. Like the trailer makes it seem like it's a legit movie. And I have like 1 or 2 scenes that are cut that are really awesome. I mean, it would have been a good movie if I finished it. It sucked my soul dry.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And there was a lot of issues that I didn't even go into, but.
I would think the one about living in Vermont would be called Against All Odds, but that's another.
Yeah, that's what it should have been called. But both of those, as unfinished or bad as they are, they they taught me a lot about interviewing people and how to get people to loosen up and like be comfortable around me. And it taught me a lot about restraint and knowing when to shut up and let the subjects talk and stuff like that.
So let's talk about that for a second.
Sure.
The brothers, the Hackney brothers, that is.
Yeah.
Are they, when you interviewed them, I'm guessing you didn't have to feed them a lot. They seemed like they were an open book.
They were pretty good. They were pretty much an open book, but and I guess spoilers, like people that are listening to this should have watched the movie by now, hopefully.
That's actually the premise of our documentary site here,
Okay, cool.
So yeah, you if you haven't watched it, go watch it and then come back and listen to this.
Yeah. So, and I'm sorry for going off on tangents with the other films. I'll get back to how A Band Called Death came to be, but definitely they were very open, except for the fact that they did not want to talk about David being an alcoholic. They didn't want to go into that.
Only the children did.
Only the children did. Yeah. And it took about, I'd say, a year and a half of filming to get anybody to start bringing it up and talking about that. And I told the guys, I was like, I'm not going to stop. I need this part of the story. This is what makes David human. And this is what the audience is going to connect with the most. The fact that he was flawed, but a great musician. And in their eyes, they thought David just needs to be perfect in this movie. Like no issues at all. He was fine. But, and it really helped that Jeff Hallett, my co-director, was a recovering alcoholic of 25 years. So, between the two of us, we were able to finally get them to loosen up. And once they realized we weren't being exploitive of telling David's story, it was simply just part of the story that needed to be told.
Those gentlemen also come from another time when alcoholism was not, it was a flaw, not a disease. And,
exactly.
If it wasn't that, it would have been something else destructive. Mm-hmm. So there's no shame in that.
No, not at all. And again, Jeff was very helpful with talking them through all of that because he still goes to AA and everything. But yeah, do you want me to get back to the story? I'm sorry.
No, everything's good. These tangents are great.
Yeah. So yeah, basically, I'm a filmmaker sitting in my office feeling like I'm a waste of space. I've got one shitty documentary feature I made that no one's ever going to see. I've got one that's never going to get completed because I just don't have the energy or money to finish it. And then I'm not making narrative films, which is what I want to do. And I remember, sitting in my office kind of bummed out. Then one day my friend Nate hit me up and he's like, dude, I'm shooting a music video for this guy that went to our film school. You probably know him. His name's Jeff Hallett. And I had heard of Jeff. I knew he was like this biker guy that went to my school after I graduated, and he had tat sleeves, and he made music videos. And I did want to meet him, so I was like, sure, this would be a perfect opportunity. And this was a music video for some kind of crappy poppy punk group. I won't name it. Right. But it was a fun shoot, and I really connected with Jeff meeting him for the first time. And it was on that set that he started telling me how he's got these guys that he's buddies with. He's been friends with them for 25 years, but he only found out just last week based on a New York Times article that they were in this punk rock group called Death. And, they were black from Detroit playing punk rock music before the Sex Pistols or Ramones. Like, he gave me the whole story. And I remember just thinking, man, this is bullshit. Like, I'm from New York. I would have heard about these guys, Like, I was so cocky. I was like, man, I've never heard of this story before. And at the time, he just wanted me to help DP like a couple of interviews. He was going to do like a teeny little 20-minute documentary on these guys. And I didn't even want to do that. I was like, fuck documentaries. Like, I was like, dude, you have no idea how much it sucks to make these things and like lose everything. And by everything, I mean money, relationships, hope, And he said, he's like, man, let me just send you an email with the New York Times article. And there were 2 tracks online, Keep on Knocking and Politicians in My Eyes. He said, let me send you those tracks. You listen to them and let me know what you think. And I was like, all right, sure, whatever. So he sent me the email that night. He was so excited, and I immediately just like blew it off. I didn't look at it for like 2 weeks. I felt terrible, but I was like, you know what? I don't really know Jeff. I don't want to make documentaries. Fuck this guy. So by the end of those 2 weeks, though, there I was sitting in my office being really fucking depressed and thinking, man, like I kind of, like the hip hop doc, it was a great experience, but I'm not even like a huge hip hop fan anymore like I used to be back in the day, and I'm more a rock and roll fan. And Jeff wanted to do this 20-minute documentary, and it's punk rock. What? Let me check out his email. Maybe it is a fun weekend shoot, to do with him. And so I opened up his email, and the first thing I did was play "Keep on Knocking," and I couldn't believe what I was listening to. I mean, it was like hearing the greatest rock song never heard. Like almost like I always do this analogy. It was like me hearing maybe like the Rolling Stones' "Paint It Black" or something, and nobody else had heard it except for me. And I was like, holy shit. And then I read the New York Times article, and it was like right there, like full page. And I was like, oh my God, this is real. And I called him back immediately, and I was like, dude, you're fucking crazy. You want to do a 20-minute doc on these guys? I told him, I was like, no. This is a feature-length doc. We have to go out. We have to spend all of our time and money on this. We're going to lose everything. But it's meant to be. Like, we have to make this film, and it has to be a feature. And he agreed. He was a little worried at first. He's like, if you think we can do it, man. And I was like, I know we can do it. So that's what started it. All out of pocket, just me and him.
I love it that the feeling is I'm okay with going in all in on something and losing everything as long as I'm really excited about what it is. I mean,
that's the thing. And I told Jeff, I said, listen, I'm pretty burnt on the hip hop doc. Like I'm pretty drained money wise, but I have all the equipment. So as long as you're covering like the travel and food, I'll bring all my equipment on for free. Let's just do it. Let's fucking make this film. And that's what we did for like a year and a half. It was just me and him going out and busting our ass off. Basically just the two of us.
Like what kind of medium do you shoot it on?
Yeah, we shot most of the film on a Panasonic HVX 200 in 720p because I don't think they did 1080p. And we shot it with a Red Rock micro attachment using Nikon lenses from the 70s. It's the most Frankenstein way of doing it, but I knew, DSLRs weren't popular yet. And that was the only way to get HD and to get a tight depth of field in a cheap way instead of, getting the bigger end camera.
Yeah.
And I like the HVX. They were really good if you take off the Red Rock attachment to add lenses. If it's by itself, it's a great cinema verite lens or direct cinema lens where you could just like roam around and film everywhere. And you can control the sound and everything yourself. So you don't really need a sound guy with them. I mean, I do recommend you use a sound guy, but we didn't use a sound guy. The sound guy was me and the camera guy was me.
Yeah.
It was pretty wild, but that's how we got it done. And then later on, when DSLRs started coming out, I did use like, I think a Canon 7D for like a few kind of B-roll shots of records playing and stuff. And I think eventually I even upgraded to an AF100, a Panasonic AF100. I like the Panasonics because they look the most like film to me. They had this film, I guess, kind of gamma or something that went over the picture that really added. And also they shot in 24 frames per second, which I loved.
That's kind of a film look thing. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it worked. I mean, it's all in how you light it, really. Like I used to teach film, and all these kids were all bent up. I need to get a red camera. I need to get an Arri, camera to film. I'm like, guys, you could film on anything. Like it's all in how you light it, and it's all in how good the story is told.
Yeah, I don't want to chase this dog too far, but I just saw High Flying Bird on Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
It was a feature, and it was all shot on iPhone.
Yeah. Some great films are being shot. Tangerine was amazing, I thought. It looked great. But yeah, you should never let not being able to get that expensive equipment stop you from making your art. If you're that passionate, you got to make it. It's just going to kill you.
Well, it's something for us to look forward to is the ubiquity of great cameras Should bode well for the future, but the kids will never know the pain.
No, I learned on film too at the beginning. When I went to film school, I was shooting on 16 millimeter.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I was one of the last guys trained to cut tape, and then Pro Tools was like the next month or something.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing. It changes so fast.
Yeah.
Really, just like get what you got around you and just do it. It's going to get better tomorrow anyway.
Yeah,
you can't keep up with it.
Yeah, it's really about the story, and
It is.
that was what when Sean talked to me, I was just like. I was almost like, dude, you've been holding out on me. How did I not know about this? I mean, I we run a documentary film website or podcast, and I was oblivious. But that's also why there's two of us, right?
Yeah, totally. And it in the same way, that's a lot of how Jeff and I were able to accomplish so much together. He knew things about music history that I didn't know. I've always been more of a film history person, and he's always been more of a music history person, and together it was kind of like we were the yin to each other's yangs.
Right. Yeah. Mark, you mentioned the difference between a movie and a documentary, and it seems to me as a documentary, and of course I've never made a documentary, probably won't ever make a documentary, but
Don't do it.
If we do, we're going to Vermont.
Yeah.
Yeah. Finish that movie.
Yeah, the pressure and the responsibility you have to tell someone else's story seems like an awful lot. I mean, there's got to be nights where you're laying awake going, man, I can't leave this out. I can't leave this out. And then,
that's a good point.
During editing, it's got to be painful.
It's brutal. And I do one thing that I don't know if a lot of documentarians do, but I get emotionally invested with my subject.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes very draining throughout the process. And I become like a family member to them all, but it's just so draining by the time it's all over. And it hurts you. It really beats you down. I had a nervous breakdown after A Band Called Death came out. I was a wreck. But it's all part of my process. I mean, everybody's got their own way of doing it. But yeah, the burden of telling like their story and then not fucking it up. Like that.
Right. Yeah.
And then when you go in, common theme among everybody we talk to is, you could just shoot and interview and interview. But when you start cutting away, it's like, do we still have the whole story here?
And the best part is no matter what you do, no matter how much you leave in or how much you leave out, you're going to get criticized for it. People are going to see something in the film they fucking hate. Why is that in the film? And then they're going to like see something that's not in the film or know that there's something not in the film. Be like, why the fuck did he leave that out?
Yeah, I meant to tell you I was a little angry about. No, I'm just kidding. I loved it.
I love hearing what triggers people with the film because it's such a positive film. And I think we did a good job getting what the story we wanted to tell, which was a more family oriented story. But like there's like communities of punk rock people that are just like, this should have been more focused on punk rock and this and that. And then there's other people, who are like, why is fucking Kid Rock in this movie? Why is Elijah?
Yeah.
And there's a reason for everything.
Yeah. We'll spot you at Kid Rock.
Yeah.
Because we got Vernon Reed, so we'll spot you.
Yeah,
at Kid Rock.
Vernon Reed. Yeah, exactly. I balanced it out.
Yeah. One of the things that you said that I think is an interesting dynamic. Maybe we have some similarity here, but my family, came from out east in Georgia, and when I was 1, we moved to Texas, and there's I have extended family out there, but there's not 11 of us in our family. It was my brother who I've lost, and my mom and my dad, and so. My wife has a big family, and she doesn't understand, like, when there's 17 of them in the house and that kind of thing. It can be a little daunting for her, but I love all those family ties, and so when I see 3 brothers amongst other siblings that decide, man, we're going to have each other's back and we're going to be best friends and we're never going to fight. And then they live it out. Maybe that hit a really emotional, personal chord for me.
Mm-hmm. cool.
So there were a lot of little personal ties
Definitely.
to things, but what a great story. I also love, Sean and I both we met at a Baptist college. We're not that over the top religious or anything, but I could certainly understand the spiritual undertones of what there's, and maybe like the what the impact the father
Yeah,
had on them.
totally.
And
I knew that was a big part of the story, and I mean to show you like my my own like what I it's always about the story, right? It's never about my own opinion. At least it shouldn't be, in my opinion. If you're doing a documentary, yes, it's all subjective. It's the filmmaker's vision, whatever. But I'm an atheist myself, and I knew that the spiritual part of their story needed to be told. I knew that it was a big part of the story. So did Jeff. Jeff's a very spiritual person, and the band made it very adamant that it's all about this. And so we didn't shy away from it. That's another thing we get criticized for here and there, is the spiritual side of things, the religious side of things. But fuck them, it's part of their story.
Yeah, no, that's really sensitive of you to pick up on that, especially if you don't necessarily agree with it.
Yeah,
the fact that this story was unearthed and made very popular by you, it makes me wonder. I'm a very curious person, but like, how many other stories like this are there out there?
Man. I think I have that running through my mind every single day when I wake up. It's partly it's what holds me back probably creatively, is I'm always thinking, man, I got to wait until a story like that comes across my desk again.
Yeah, and how often will that happen?
It's rare.
Yeah.
Very rare. That was lightning in the bottle right there.
It's crazy. It's great. Hey, Mark.
You want me to finish how we got producers on?
Please.
So Jeff and I, we, like I said, this was all out of pocket, pure passion project. But a year and a half into it, we were starting to feel it. Jeff was about to get a divorce, partly because of the movie. I was thinking about selling my house again because I was so broke, because I was only working on the movie, and the movie didn't pay any of us. There was also this very tense time where we went up against a big hip hop artist that was trying to do a doc on the guys, and we actually came out okay. Like, he ended up not making his film, and we continued on, but that was very draining. And so, like, a year and a half into it, we were so wrecked and at the end of our ropes. And Jeff works a 9 to 5, or at least he worked a 9 to 5 up there at the time, and he called me up at like early in the morning, and he's like, Mark, he's like, we gotta talk about the film. We gotta figure out what to do. It's killing me at home with the wife. It's killing you at home. It's not worth hurting ourselves anymore. It's like, we could do this film still, but let's do it in pieces maybe. And if not in pieces, if we can't do that, maybe we should just like give it up. It was a pretty fucking depressing conversation, I gotta say. Because I had spent that year and a half, and so did he, both emotionally invested with that project and that family. And we felt like if we didn't tell this story immediately, somebody else was going to just take it, just like the hip hop artist tried to do. And we didn't want that to happen because we had no street cred. We had no credits really to our names. Like, we knew it was an important film that we had to make. And so I told him, I was like, well, I don't want to like give up the film. Like, let's just do it like let's spend the next 10 years making it like Hoop Dreams or something. And he agreed, and he's like, all right, man, I'll talk to you later, and hung up. And I was pretty fucking bummed, and so was he. And I don't even think it was like 2 hours after that conversation. I'm not shitting you at all. 2 hours after that conversation, my friend Nate, who was the one that introduced me to Jeff at the beginning, he frantically started texting me about how Scott Mosier, this big Hollywood producer that I knew at the time, as being the guy that produced every Kevin Smith film, from Clerks to Chasing Amy to Dogma, and he also produced a little film called Good Will Hunting. And So the name was very known to me. And he's like, dude, Scott Mosier's tweeting about your movie like crazy. He wants to see it. He saw the trailer. Now, at the time, I had put a trailer online because, like I said, there was that incident with the hip-hop artist who was saying he was doing a film on them. So I made a trailer of what we were doing to show people, no, like two nobody white boys from Vermont are making a film on this. and I put that trailer out, and everybody thought that trailer was that hip-hop artist trailer. So it kind of went a little viral at the time. and so Scott saw the trailer thinking the film was done and thinking it was that artist. And he was tweeting, reaching out to people saying, does anybody know about this film? Where can I see it? Blah, blah, blah. I just, he's like, I just got the album. It's amazing. I want to know more. And so I asked Nate, because I wasn't on Twitter at the time. I was so like anti-Twitter back then. I was like, fuck Twitter, man. Everybody's on Twitter. Everyone's tweeting. What the fuck is tweeting? Like I was such a little punk about it back then. And Nate was like really into it at the time. And he's like, I think I could write him a personal message. I was like, do that. Give him my email address and tell him that, you're friends with the director. This is his email and he'd love to talk to you. And within an hour, Scott emailed me back after he was tweeting. And this is the same day I had that conversation with Jeff. That night we were on the phone with Scott and he was just like, man, he's like, what I'm seeing, I like. And, I know you guys know me as the Kevin Smith producer, but I haven't produced for him since Zach and Marie Make a Porno. And honestly, like, I'm getting into docs now. I just produced one doc, and it's been my dream to do a rock and roll doc on a band with some really good fucking music. And he's like, this is, I think, for me. And so, we had him sign an NDA, showed him more of our footage, and he signed on. He became our producer. All of a sudden, we had a Hollywood producer on board, which was insane to me. And then from there, he brought in his team of friends from Haven Entertainment, Kevin Mann and Matt Fernisario, and they were the producers to go find money for us. And they ended up finding money from, of all people, Jerry Ferrara, who played Turtle on that show Entourage.
Wow.
He ended up writing the final check to help us finish the film. And then Scott brought on his editor, because I was killing myself with shooting and editing and directing. And Scott's like, Mark, do you want an editor now that we have finishing funds? And I was like, fuck yeah. So we brought on this.
Look here, Scott, we want to package this with a 3-picture deal about people from Vermont, a hip-hop obscure group, get called Against All Odds.
I should have did that. And it wasn't even like those producers were able to bring in a lot of money. They brought in just enough to help us get some post-production stuff done.
Well, the universe helped you get it done.
I mean, it was like a total Cinderella story. It's
you atheist.
Yeah, I know, right?
Hey, Mark. David claimed this years ago. It was going to happen.
I mean, so I'm a dumb atheist because here's the thing. I'm this big believer in fate. Like,
you're a terrible atheist.
I believe things are meant to happen a certain way, and it's so stupid of me to think that because I'm an atheist.
Yeah, you're like Sam Harris. You're a religious atheist. Yeah,
yeah, pretty much. And even throughout the making of the film, I swear to God, I felt like David was like on my shoulder, kind of,
That's really
like,
cool.
Don't fuck this up, man. Like, that's right, you're doing it right. Like, pat me on the back. And
no, you did. There was something special about this story, man.
Yeah, Mark, and it's done out of a really, really cool place. You can tell that you really did care about these guys, and it's so appreciated. It's such a great story and so well told. And, the fact that you were so responsive to us, right now we're no one, and we're just trying to be somebody, and we're the little engine that could. And so we appreciate you reaching out to us and being on with us. This means a whole lot.
Yeah. Oh, definitely, bro. I mean, that's where I was back at the beginning of a band called Death, and so pay it forward.
Yeah, people have been really gracious, but we don't know of anybody else that's focusing on music documentaries, and sometimes the licensing and the expense is it's really daunting. But let me ask you one question that I always kind of want to know.
Yeah.
If somebody watched this documentary, what are the things that they might not know or see? And then what do you wish that they would come away with most? You can take those one at a time. I'm just saying, is there anything that, is there anything that we can't see that would be really surprising to us behind that you would only get from behind the scenes?
I mean, there was this whole side story about, I'm going to fuck up this story, I'm sure. Let me think here.
You're doing good so far.
Yeah, I know. There's this whole side story that we left out, which it's a deleted scene on the Australian DVD.
You left it out, bastard!
Yeah. Not only did I leave it out, but I'm a DVD collector, and so I always love buying special editions from other countries. So I left certain deleted scenes out for other countries.
The Aussies aren't going to get this.
Yeah. I basically, like, there's this whole side story about Bobby Hackney, the lead singer. He had this son named Dewan, who was a child at the time. He was being babysat by Bobby Jr., who's the lead singer of Rough Francis now. And Bobby was, I think, playing on drums, and Dewan ran out into traffic and got hit and killed. And I think that happened. It happened on something like. I'm screwing this up, I'm sure, but it happened on like one of the brothers' birthdays, and then I think Jules, the other son that's in Rough Francis, was born on another brother's birthday or something. It was something like that,
So really important, but to tell that deal takes you off narrative.
It takes you off narrative. And it was a very hard story for him to tell. Bobby, he was crying, and I just felt like it slowed things down. It was also something maybe it was a personal story that just didn't need to be in there. It didn't really help the rest of the story. It was a interesting, how everything's connected type thing. But at that point in the film and the edit, we had so many scenes like that to show how everything's connected. And I'm sorry for screwing that story up.
I think that was perfect. So what do you think? As if we can put you in the storyteller role, right? Mm-hmm. Somebody else's story through your lens. What do you hope people left with
this movie?
Yeah.
Honestly, I hope they left with an appreciation of family and a love of brotherhood and a love of really good music and a willingness to go out and seek music that might not be as popular as what's being played on the radio, I don't know if that's a good answer, but that's what I hope people leave with.
No, that's a great answer.
I wanted people to leave the theater and want to buy that album, and that's what happened, and I'm proud of that.
You got me, brother.
Yeah.
I bought it.
they got me too. The first concert that they did, when they did their first tour, I never really saw them play live outside of a few like practice sessions here and there, but not on stage with an audience. And after I saw that, I went right up to their merch table and I was like, I got to buy an album now.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Yeah. We watched a YouTube video of you wearing the Rough Francis t-shirt, and we were like, dude, where can we find that?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think the Rough Francis shirt's maybe on their website. But the Sons are in a really awesome band, Rough Francis. It's so fucking good.
Yeah. We need to delve into that.
So totally. while we're on that,
did a music video,
for our audience, is there anywhere that they can go and purchase this DVD that helps you as the filmmaker? Do you have any kind of stuff like that to plug, websites or anything like that?
So for A Band Called Death, I'm pretty sure it's available on all VOD platforms with the exception of Netflix. It was on Netflix for a year when it first came out. Excuse me. It was on Netflix for a year when it first came out, and that's where it got its audience base. So that's where it kind of blew up. But that was only a year deal, but I'm pretty sure it's on Amazon, iTunes.
And Hulu. If you're a Roku customer, I saw it on my Quello subscription, which is a music documentary service.
And I think if you go to the website, which isn't really the website anymore, a lot has changed.
What is that
Originally,
URL?
If you go to www.abandcalleddeath.com, it'll take you to the Draft House Films webpage now. But on there, if you click on A Band Called Death, I believe they have a list of all the VOD places that you can get it. I really wish that people could find this on DVD. Unfortunately, I don't think Draft House has been producing them for a couple of years now. And they did give us like the most badass, kick-ass DVD ever. Like, they had everything on there that I wanted. They did it the way I wanted it. Unfortunately, Draft House doesn't really exist anymore, so they're kind of just holding on to our film and collecting the couple of pennies it's making here and there until our deal is done with them, which I think is a year or two from now. So that's kind of a bummer to me. I would like to get my film back and bring it to some place that will put effort into getting it out there. But they did do a great job for those first, 2 or 3 years that the film was out.
Denny Tedesco from the Wrecking Crew had the same deal, and his editor virtually revolted on him and was like, we gotta stop. We've got to, because he kept interviewing, but he was like, that's the beauty of DVD. These can all be deleted scenes, and exactly. He just kept going. He was.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at my list now. I think I got like close to 20 deleted scenes. And the one thing that kills me, why I really wish people could still get the DVD. And by the way, they can buy it at Alamo Drafthouse Theaters. They usually sell them in their DVD vending machine, but I think those are just what they have left in stock until they sell out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because if you go to look for the movie on Amazon now, I mean, people are selling it for like $80 and stuff. It's like,
yeah.
It's the out of print copy. And when Draft House first released the film, they even had a limited copy, which is fucking awesome. It was a gatefolded case, this is a vision that I had that I wanted, and they did it. There's a gatefolded case that you open, and on one side is the 45, and then the other is the Blu-ray, and it came with a booklet with stories and pictures. It was awesome.
Oh, I wish I would have known about that. Wow.
But yeah, currently I think the only place you can actually get a physical copy is at a Draft House theater, Alamo Draft House. And it's worth getting because of the deleted scenes, particularly the deleted scene with Wayne Kramer from the MC5, who both Jeff and I really wish we could have figured out a way to fit into the film.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, arguably, one of the godfathers of punk rock.
Oh, sure. Yep.
And one of the criticisms we get is, how come Iggy Pop isn't in it? How come Wayne Kramer isn't in it? How come all these people aren't in it? And our answer is, we went out to reach to everybody, and the only one that got back to us and did an interview was Wayne Kramer. Unfortunately, what he was giving us just didn't fit in the narrative of the edit. It was a real bummer to us that we couldn't fit him in. But I love that deleted scene because he gives David Hackney such high praise as a guitarist and a musician. And he gives the band such high praise. And he says, he's like, these guys are just in the wrong part of town at the right time. If they were playing with us at the Grandy Ballroom across, town, they would have been hit. They would have been big. They would have been a hit.
That really is it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes it's another time. Sometimes it's you're not in the right neighborhood.
It's scary to think about that.
Well, I mean, that's kind of a life thing too. But that's also why it was so cool that David was so driven and such a prophet type enigma, and that his brothers just went along with it, for him to have the vision for his own music and because look, if you're listening to this and you think, I've got to tell you, it's one thing for a guy to believe that about his own music. And there's a lot of people that are artists that believe their music is, just misunderstood. And this guy literally knew people were going to come back looking for this. And the missing part of this, or the unique part of this, is when they did find it, it holds up. It holds up right now. It's not like, oh, that was really great for back then. It holds up as I don't know, a timeless piece of punk.
Knocked me out of my seat when I first heard Keep on Knocking. I couldn't believe how solid it was.
Yeah.
It's crazy how it sounds so familiar. Like it is a song that you probably heard on the radio, you know? It's one of those weird things.
Yeah, Mark, a lot of punk rock doesn't have a hook.
Yeah.
And these songs do. I mean, you hear those choruses, you know, especially in Politicians. I mean, gosh, that chorus is just killer.
Wayne Kramer talks about that too in his Deleted Scene. He talks about, you know, punk versus the kind of punk that comes from musicians that actually learn their instruments, which I guess he was saying, you know, the MC5 is that, you know, and like Death was that. They learned their instruments, they learned, you know, all this stuff, and they played their music really well, you know.
Well, and because they were, you know, we know they weren't influences, these people, because they didn't know about them. But you know, we were talking about it before the show. We, you know, it's like I hear Doug Pinnick in from King's X in that voice. Sean said I hear Andre 3000. You know, it was so much stuff going on. But I did a summer with Iggy Pop, and these guys would have killed on the road. Yeah, you know,
man,
so.
I really do wish we got Iggy. We had a screening of the film at Michael Moore's Film Festival in Michigan, the Traverse City Film Festival. And one of the things Michael said to us was, how come Iggy's not in it? Like, oh man, we tried so hard. We were contacting his agents and managers for like 2 years, and it just never went anywhere, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But we tried. It would have been great to have Iggy's perspective in this.
Yeah, there's a lot of people I'd love to get for this show. You know, like Iggy hasn't returned our calls either. You know, so
I
probably won't.
It's the name of the game, right?
Yeah.
So you know, the people we ended up getting, they were, you know, emotionally, maybe even spiritually affected by the time.
Oh yeah, no, it's great. You got Henry Rollins. I mean, that's arguably the godfather of modern punk.
Yeah. And when I saw Alice Cooper, I was like, I can't believe I'm about to interview Alice Cooper. Like, I felt like doing a Wayne's World. We're not worthy.
Well, Dave Grohl seems to have assumed the role of the Sherpa for young people to understand the rock music that came before them. But Henry Rollins, I think, is that for punk. Yeah,
totally. And that interview was the one that I couldn't be there for, and Jeff couldn't. So Scott Mosier actually interviewed him for that. For that particular interview.
Yeah.
That was like the one interview that Scott did on his own.
Well, that's cool. That's really cool.
Scott Mosier, by the way, his directorial debut happened this year. It was that Grinch movie that came out, the cartoon, The Grinch. That's his first director credit.
Oh, cool.
Wow, that is cool.
Yeah. You know, him and Kevin Smith made a bet at the beginning. He was, you know, whoever won the bet would direct the film and the other one would produce it, and he lost the bet, so he ended up producing Clerks. He just ended up being the producer for most of his life.
Well, before we wrap, do you have any projects that you're working on or that you would like us to know about? We're interested in what you're doing, bro.
Yeah, sure. So a band called Death, like I said, I guess the best way to advertise that is to go to www.abandcalleddeath.com, which would take them to the Draft House Films webpage, where I believe it has a list of all places that it's on VOD. They could also buy a physical copy at an Alamo Draft House theater. I also have my second film debuted through Gravitas Ventures this past June. It's called The Crest. It's a Irish surfing documentary, I guess.
Nice.
Is the best way to describe it. I mean, it's deeper than that, but that's what happens in it. And that is available on Amazon and iTunes and Google Plus. And you can get a physical copy of that as well through Amazon. And yeah, I mean, I moved to Georgia for a film on a huge musical icon, and who knows if that's ever going to happen. It's been 3 years of having producers look for money and nothing happening. So I'm either going to give up on that film or just wait it out a little bit longer. But that's the name of the game, I guess. Wow.
Yeah. Well, before we let you go, one other question that we like to ask is, as far as music documentaries that maybe you've seen that maybe inspired you to want to do a music documentary, are there any that stick out for you?
Yeah. I like that question. IndieWire asked us that at the beginning, and I was like, man, this is awesome. I finally get to like let people know what influenced me to make this film. Definitely, it might sound funny to some people, but Spinal Tap was a huge influence for me.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, it's a mockumentary, but those guys were living those characters while they were filming it like a real documentary, you know?
Right.
And so that was a big influence. I took a lot from The Last Waltz and how to film a stage performance in a very cinematic way. I love the tight depth of field that Scorsese had.
It's a big anniversary right now for The Last Waltz. A lot going on with that. Yeah.
Yep. So those two were big for me. And are we just saying music docs or any?
Yeah, I just want to know what you're into. Yeah, what sticks out for you? But okay. To that question, I'll open it up. So Denny Tedesco told us that Broadway Danny Rose was the inspiration for how he shot The Wrecking Crew. So, you can reach out and kind of say, I was trying to shoot this like The Godfather or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, well, a lot of the cinema verite, or actually direct cinema, which is the fly on the wall stuff, I took a lot of inspiration from Grey Gardens. I can't say it right. Grey Gardens. The Maysles brothers.
Yeah.
That was a huge influence for me, and I used to study that film a lot and watch it a lot. Trying to think of some others. I think at the time, I could be wrong, but I think Anvil came out, and that was an inspiration.
We want to do Anvil. Yeah.
But I mean, and then because I'm a narrative filmmaker at heart, I just gain a lot of inspiration from movies in general, particularly horror films. A lot of people don't realize this, but I have a lot of homages throughout all of my films to horror films or genre films or grindhouse.
Can you talk to me about that for a second?
I mean, they're so subtle and dumb.
No, then give me dumb. Give me subtle. Let's go.
Like a band called Death and the Crest both end with a kind of like epilogue in a way that Last House on the Left ends that I like.
Yeah.
There's a scene in my latest film, The Crest, which I took direct reference from the movie Southern Comfort, which with that whole ending scene. I don't know if you guys saw that movie, but this ending scene where this Cajun music is overpowering the soundtrack, and there's this scene happening with that music overpowering it.
Joe and I went to college. We mentioned we went to a Baptist college. We went to a college that's about 15 miles from where that was filmed.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah,
that's a great
place.
film.
Where men are men and sheep are nervous.
Yep.
Only kidding, folks.
I'm trying to remember some of the other things in a band called Death. But typically it's like the way a scene was edited or a shot or, it'll be a little thing. I'm like, man, I'm thinking of Texas Chainsaw Massacre for this. I'm going to do it just like that. You know?
Yeah, I'm going to do a flyover from the water, just like Interview with a Vampire.
Yeah, exactly. That kind of stuff. Actually, I had for The Crest, I was doing a flyover the water with, I believe it was the movie Blown Away in mind. This Jeff Bridges movie that came out in the 90s.
Tommy Lee Jones, Jeff Bridges. Yes.
Yeah. So I get my influences from all of the narratives.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I really do like throwing in some references to horror films here and there because that's my jam.
Oh man, that's rad. Okay. Yeah. Well, will you come back and talk to us sometime?
Oh, definitely. For sure.
Excellent. And will you come eat some Tex-Mex with us if you're ever in Houston?
Hell yeah.
There we go.
All right, my man.
Mark, thank you so much, man. This has been great. You're awesome.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, man. I think this is awesome. You guys are doing a podcast focused on this,
Yeah. When we get this one rolling out, you can log into Twitter for the first time this year, and you can help us get it out there. And but use your secret hip hop account, right? So people will think you're